Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's mukbang, I have some exciting ass food for you guys. So if you have watched my cheat day from like last winter, I did a cheat day where I fell absolutely in love with this cream cheese chocolate chip bar from Walmart, and I decided that I wanted to try to recreate it kind of. It's definitely not a bar, it's like a whole casserole. And then I also I wanted to try these remake of the In-N-Out fries from this place called Carney's. It's in Los Angeles, and they look bomb. So I wanted to try their fries, and then I also got their Chicago dog, which has onions and relish and cheese on it. And then I did order a double cheeseburger, but they gave me a chili double cheeseburger. So we'll see if it's good or not. I'm starving. I'm ready to dig in. I have a conspiracy today for you guys, but before I get into that, I'm gonna start eating because like I said, I'm starving. Okay. Oh my God. This recipe was so easy to make. It took me like 15 minutes to put together and then bake it. So freaking easy, so I hope it's good. I'll put the recipe in the description, obviously. Oh my gosh. Okay. That is literally so good. Like you can just kind of see, I'll actually start eating from this side so you guys can see better, but it's so, shoo! It's so soft. Like it's like a gooey cookie with cheesecake. So, my conspiracy today is something that just happened. So I'm actually really excited to talk to you guys about it today because it's also kind of about politics. It's not really about politics in terms of ideology, so I've kind of stayed away from talking about politics on my channel just because everyone has different opinions. But this is one of those conspiracies or like one of those things about politics where it doesn't really matter what you believe. I feel like anyone should care that this is happening or that this happened. So I'm really excited to talk about it because if you know me on Instagram, I'm very interested in politics. My major in college was poli-sci, political science. So I've always been very interested in politics. So I'm excited to like kind of share that side of me today on my channel because I've never talked about politics on my channel before. Before you turn off this video, I know that people get bored of politics very easily. Just hear me out. I feel like you'll be interested. If you're interested in conspiracy theories, I think you'll be interested in this video. So hear me out. I did a poll on Instagram. You guys wanted to see this. So I am about to get into the Iowa caucus debacle and how I personally believe, and the evidence points to the fact that the DNC, the media, and the campaign of Pete Buttigieg is trying to rob Bernie Sanders of the Democratic nomination. I am a huge Bernie Sanders supporter, but I would be just as upset if it was any other candidate because we live in a democracy. If someone wins a caucus or a primary, hands down, they should get the delegates. They should be the one who walks away with the victory, even if it's someone that I don't like. So that's just my little spiel intro, and I'm gonna get into it after this bite. I need one more bite of this cheesecake. Yum. So I guess I will just start from the beginning of what happened. So the presidential primary race always starts with Iowa. So there's always a lot of focus around Iowa, not because they have a large number of delegates up for grabs, because Iowa has a very tiny population in comparison to a lot of other states, but because of the media attention that surrounds who wins. So if you win Iowa, you get this media bump, media coverage, everyone talks about you like you're the front runner, and it kind of sets the stage for the rest of the election. Like, for example, In 2008, Barack Obama was an underdog actually in the election, and when he won Iowa, that's what really gave him a huge boost and allowed him to be successful in the rest of the primaries and caucuses. And so because there's so much attention on Iowa, there's also a lot of polls, like Iowa is constantly polled to see like where the candidates are standing. And there's one poll that is the gold standard of all polls. It's by the Des Moines Register, which is a newspaper in Iowa. And it's predicted the winner of Iowa forever. Like, it comes out a couple days before the caucus, and it's really never been wrong. So it's a huge deal. Like, whoever is leading in that, going into Iowa, like, they can be pretty confident that they're gonna win. So that poll was actually not released this year. It was squashed or quashed by Pete Buttigieg's campaign. And Pete's reasoning for getting the poll pulled was that his name wasn't on the options, but it was. So the poll, it was eventually leaked, and it showed that Bernie Sanders was winning Iowa. So one can only assume that the reason why, after looking at all the other stuff that's happened since, one can only assume that Pete wanted to get this poll pulled because he didn't want Bernie Sanders to get that good press coverage going into Iowa. So that's the first fishy thing, but if that would have happened, I would have been like, whatever, it's just a poll, who cares, you know? But that's definitely not where it ends. So I'm gonna try these fries now. Yeah. If I was In-N-Out, I'd be so mad. Like, you create this like bomb fry idea, and then so many other places can do it and have it taste just as good. Because these are so good. I seriously have an obsession with cheese fries. Like, even though I've had them so much in these past couple months, it does not help my craving, it just makes it worse. My goodness. I am so happy so far. Wow. I'm so excited leading up to the night of the caucus. Like, I am checking the results. So I'm like obsessively refreshing to find out the results. And they don't come. And eventually we learned that the app that was like, why do we have to go to an app first of all? Why can't we just do paper ballots? So much easier. But basically the Iowa Democratic Party had this great idea of, you know, stepping into the 21st century and having an app record the results of the caucus. So on the night that the results aren't getting released, we learned that the app failed and the app crashed. There was like so many stories of stuff that went wrong with the app. People would get frozen on the last step of reporting the data. People didn't know what their PIN numbers were to get into the app. Like, it was just a mess. And so as we learn more as the night goes on, we learned that Pete Buttigieg's campaign, is that how you would say it? Like, when you add an S to it, it just sounds so weird. I'll just say Pete. Pete's campaign donated $42,000 to the creation of this app. You're telling me a presidential candidate donated money to the app that is in charge of being fair in terms of determining who won? The name of the app is literally called Shadow, which, could you think of like a more supervillainy name for an app? Like, why couldn't you have called it like Democracy Today or something like that? Like, you had to call it Shadow. Like, that just sounds sketchy. But he donated $42,000 to Shadow. And we also find out that the person who is the CEO of Shadow, her husband works for Pete's campaign. He's a senior strategist. She canvassed for him multiple times in Iowa. She has tweeted about her support for him like multiple times over the past year. So that's just a conflict of interest right there. The person who is creating the app for the Iowa caucus should not have such a strong affinity towards one candidate. So basically the app fails and no one really knows what's going on that night. Iowa is not releasing any results. It was like 1% reporting and that's it. No one really knows what's happening that night. My goodness. So while the results are not out, there's only 1% reporting. Nobody knows who's winning. So with 1% reporting and nobody knowing who's winning, Pete decides to declare victory. So you're declaring victory and 1% of the results are out. My thought process, like at first I was really confused, like maybe he's just confused, I don't know what's going on. And now that I know more about the app and everything that went in behind it, I think that he probably declared victory because he knew that the app was on his side and he knew that the app would come through to give him the results that he needed to win. Because why else would you declare victory? You look like a buffoon if you lose, you know what I mean? Especially because the polls leading up, it'd be different too if he was the front runner, but the polls leading up to Iowa, he was down like 10 points. Like, why would you be so confident in your results? So he declares victory, and after he declares victory, then the Bernie Sanders team comes out, and Bernie Sanders team was smart because they also got screwed in 2016, which that's a whole other story, but they got screwed in 2016, so Bernie's team decided to develop an app of their own to record their own data for the caucus just to make sure that they weren't going to get screwed again. So this is the Chicago dog. It has American cheese, relish, and onions on it. I want to add some fries to it. So the Bernie team came out with their own results. And like I said, I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter, so I might be biased in saying this, but I've never seen him be caught in a lie. Throughout his entire political career, that's one of the reasons why I support him. He's been incredibly consistent. So Bernie came out with his own numbers and they had him comfortably 5 points up. So they also declared victory. So it was Pete and Bernie who were both declaring victory at the time there was no results from the Iowa Democratic Party yet. It was already good, but adding the animal style fries onto it made it even better. Who would have thought? So yeah, Bernie Sanders declares victory, Pete declares victory. No one knows what's happening. And then over the next couple of days, the Iowa Democratic Party slowly releases a trickle of results. Like super slowly, like first they report 62%, and then 71%, and then 75%. And it's over the course of like 2 days, 3 days even maybe, that they report the results. But there was evidence that the precinct chairs who were in charge of reporting the results had sent in their results like days before that they were reported. So the reasoning apparently behind the slow trickle of results was because they needed to quality control these results and make sure that they were correct because the app had messed up. So apparently that's why they were releasing the results so slowly over the course of like 2 or 3 days. But funnily enough, every single time they would release results, Pete would be in the lead by state delegate elects, which is technically what, or officially is what declares the winner in Iowa, because the delegates are who goes to the convention to nominate the nominee. So every time they would release results, Pete would be in the lead by delegate elects, even though Bernie Sanders was leading in the popular vote. And that's because they were releasing rural areas first, and they weren't giving us any reasoning behind why they were releasing certain areas first and other areas last, especially because they released the satellite caucuses that Bernie Sanders did super well in at the very end, even though the satellite caucuses were the first to vote on election day. So it was just this weird, non-transparent way of releasing results. And so the only thing that I can assume is that they wanted to give Pete this extra long victory lap and kind of boost him up in the media as this underdog who had won. Especially because, to me, so there's already so many cries of conspiracy, and so many people think it's rigged after we learned that the app that was used to run the caucuses had been funded by Pete's campaign. The CEO was a Pete supporter. So there's already so much that's sketchy. Why wouldn't you be transparent about in what way you're releasing results? Why wouldn't you be transparent about the process? If you want to preserve the trust and the faith of the voters, you need to be transparent with us about what you're doing, how you're doing it, what's happening. But no, there was not a peep from the IDP, not a peep from the DNC at all. And while they're releasing these results, they are riddled with errors. So they took forever to release them for quality control reasons, and the results are incorrect. Like, it's beyond me. Like, truly, either it's a conspiracy or these people are the dumbest people on earth. Like, there's no in between, and there's no other options. Those are the only two options, okay? Like, it's unreal. And before I even say anything, let me have you guys guess. In what way do you think, or who do you think the mistakes benefited? I'll actually put a chart up because someone made a chart of how the errors disproportionately benefited Pete versus Bernie. But pretty much every single mistake was taking away votes from Bernie and giving them to Pete, Deval Patrick, or Tom Steyer. So if you actually go back and correct all the mistakes, because to this day, they're still incorrect. Yes, they're still incorrect to this day. And the caucus was, I think, on the 4th of February, and I think it's the 13th today, so like 10 days later, they're still incorrect. But if you actually go back and correct the results, well, Bernie's always been winning the popular vote, but if you correct the mistakes in allocating delegates, Bernie wins delegates too. But the mistakes still have not been corrected. Like I said, they're either stupid or it's a conspiracy. There's no in between. There can't be. I love this so much. Like, look at how freaking soft it is. And you know what I also think is funny too is, do you guys remember in 2016 when Hillary Clinton actually won the popular vote to Donald Trump, but lost because of the way the delegates were allocated? How many left-wing media outlets were crying about how she had won the popular vote, but it was unfair that she didn't win the election? Now when Pete wins the delegates, like I said, he didn't even win the delegates because the mistakes, if they're fixed, they go to Bernie. But he won the delegates, And now all of a sudden, 80% of news coverage focused on the delegate amount and not on popular vote. So you guys are telling me that you were all up in arms about the popular vote in 2016 and now all of a sudden delegates matter because they're in favor of Pete? Don't give me that. Don't try to sell me on that bullshit. I'm not buying it. So this is the double cheeseburger with chili. Like I said, I just ordered the cheeseburger, but honestly, the chili looks good, so I'm not mad about it. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. I can't. Whenever it's like pink in the middle like that, I just can't do it. I just can't. It's like the first thing I think ever that I've just decided I'm not gonna eat in a mukbang, but you guys, I don't do the whole uncooked meat thing. I mean, I'm more than happy with my fries, so I really don't care. Is anyone else like that, or am I crazy with their hamburgers or like meat in general? I've always been like that. Like even before I was vegetarian, I like could not. I can't do it. So you know how I said that they were releasing the areas that Bernie had won at the very end, or at the very end of the results they were releasing, so that it appeared so that Pete could claim victory for a couple more days? Well, at the end of, like when all the results are almost in, I think it's like 97% reporting. So then with like 97% of the results in, and the last 3% that were supposed to help Bernie and like boost him over the top, Tom Perez, after like 3 days of a mess in Iowa where like nothing has made sense, everything's been riddled with errors, there's been no transparency, then like 3 days in, Tom Perez decides to tweet out, "Enough is enough," and it calls for a recanvass. So like I said, if there's no conspiracy here, or if there's no foul play here, then why are they doing everything in their power to make it look like there is foul play? Like, why not just release 100% of the results and then call for a recanvass? Especially because when he tweeted that, I guess the DNC had been in Iowa counting results or had taken charge of counting the results for over 48 hours. So 48 hours into counting the results, you suddenly decide that you need to recanvass everything. I don't buy it for a second. Like, I don't. Especially because in 2016, there were emails that leaked that showed that Tom Perez favored Hillary Clinton and was going to do everything in his power to get her elected as opposed to Bernie Sanders. So is this really the dude that we trust to call for a recanvass and think that he's doing it in Bernie's best interest? Like, I don't personally believe that for a second. But he calls for a recanvass anyways. The same night that he calls for a recanvass, Pete has a town hall on CNN. So Bernie is actually right before Pete in the town hall. They don't mention Iowa at all. Just like the generic town hall type stuff. Then, right as Bernie gets off the stage, the Iowa Democratic Party then decides to release 100% of results that apparently still have Pete in the lead right before Pete takes the stage at the CNN town hall. So then Chris Cuomo, knowing the results are riddled with errors that, like I said, would put Bernie Sanders over the top, declares Pete the winner in the CNN town hall. Like, Pete comes out and Chris is like, so with 100% of the results in, you have a slight lead over Bernie Sanders. Like, do you have any integrity?
I have news for everybody in the room, including you, sir, I believe. The Iowa Democratic Party just released the final batch of results from the caucuses. 100% of precincts reporting. You are holding a narrow lead of 1/10 of a percentage point over Senator Sanders on the state delegate equivalence, which is the metric that we use to determine a winner. What is your reaction?
Well, it's fantastic news to hear that we won.
Like, how are you going to declare Pete the winner on national TV when you know that the results have errors? Errors that were caught by users on Twitter, errors that the New York Times had even reported on. Like, the New York Times said that they had caught like at least 10% of the results that were reported were incorrect. That is a huge number, 10% of the results. And Chris Cuomo goes out there and declares Pete the winner on CNN. And do you really think that it's coincidence that they released the 100% of the results right before Pete takes the stage? I don't. Like, Bernie was just on stage. They could have asked him about it. They didn't ask him a single thing. Pete gets on stage and all of a sudden, boom, the results are released 100% with Pete being the winner. Like, no. Especially because, like I said, Bernie's team had their own results and they had him up by 5 points. So you're going to have to explain the discrepancy between your results that are riddled with errors and Bernie's results that have him at 5 points. I can't. It looks like the Iowa Democratic Party is in cahoots with the DNC and CNN. There were other credible news sources who were like, we just can't call the results. Like, we can't call a winner because there's so many errors. There's so much that went wrong. Like, we just don't know, which is a totally fair stance to take. That is the most responsible stance to take, in my opinion. Then you have fucking Chris Cuomo out here being like, yeah, Pete, you won. And there's going to be so many people who watch that town hall who really think that a mayor from South Bend, Indiana won Iowa. And the media coverage did help Pete. Like I said, that's the most important thing coming out of Iowa. After his fake victory, he jumped up 8 to 10 points in New Hampshire. That is a huge jump, 8 to 10 points in a day. All because the media was irresponsible and people or news outlets like CNN don't want Bernie Sanders to win, and they will report more favorably on centrist, moderate candidates who are in favor of keeping the status quo intact. So I really wish I could say that I was done here. Like, I really wish that that was the pinnacle of my disappointment with the democracy we live in, but I'm not done. So Troy Price, who is the head of the Iowa Democratic Party, or the chairman of Iowa Democratic Party, comes out, I think a day later, and declares that the mistakes on the paperwork in the caucus paperwork, they can't be fixed even if they're incorrect. Why? Because, you guys get this, they can't fix the results because that would jeopardize the integrity of the process, because those papers are legal documents, so you can't change them. You want to preserve the integrity of the process? Oh, honey, the integrity of this process is long gone. Okay, there ain't no integrity left. Why don't we just call it a day, fix the results, and then we can all go home, wipe our hands, and be done with it? So that means that if I was going to a caucus and I wanted Bernie Sanders to win really bad, I could just write in that he gets 500 delegates, and they can't change that because it's a paper document, and it would ruin the integrity if they fixed my mistake of awarding Bernie Sanders 500 delegates. That makes sense. So do you guys want to see what I'm saying here by, even if you're not a Bernie supporter, it still matters? Like, this could happen to any candidate. If they try to rob Bernie Sanders of the nomination, and it's very clear as this is, I will be in the streets with a yellow vest and a blowhorn, screaming angrily. So eventually Bernie did win New Hampshire, which is great, because I was worried that they were going to try to do something sneaky there too. But he did win New Hampshire. But the next contest is in Nevada, and New Hampshire was a primary. Nevada is also a caucus, so who knows what's going to happen there, especially because, you guys, it does not end yet. I know, trust me, I'm also just as blown away, but the Nevada party, Democratic Party, whoever runs the caucus in Nevada, hired a former Pete staffer, a full-time Pete staffer who had worked for the Pete campaign all the way up until February of this year. They hired her to be the voter protection director for the Nevada caucus. I am sure there are tons of people who would be just fine voter protection directors who didn't just work for Pete's campaign, you know? Like, you really had to hire that person. Especially because, as soon as she was found out for being a former Pete staffer, the girl who got hired in Nevada scrubbed her LinkedIn, made her Twitter private, and basically tried to hide the fact that she was tied to the Pete campaign. Which is also sketchy, if you go into full cover-up mode, I don't trust you. So we'll see what happens. It's on February 22nd, I think. So it's in 9 days. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that is my conspiracy for today. I hope you guys liked it. I know that it's not my usual type of conspiracies because it's political related, but I really felt like it was important to talk about because I don't know, I was just so angered by it and so upset by it, and I've never lived in a conspiracy before. Like, all the conspiracies I've covered have happened in the past, but I've never watched one unfold in real time and just felt so helpless and like didn't know what to do. So I felt like talking to you guys about it, and hopefully enough people were interested to keep watching and could learn a little bit about it, because I think it's important to know about. Obviously the news isn't going to tell you, so I figured I would. But yeah, I hope you guys liked it. I loved this food. For some reason I'm very full. I'm on a diet, so once again, like, my stomach has shrunk, I think. It's crazy how quick that happens, but my stomach capacity is like not what it used to be, so I'm full. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video anyways, even though the burger was a fail, the fries were bomb, and so was this. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say. So I will talk to you guys in my next video.